I'm going to go ahead and call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council for Tuesday, July 28th, 2020 to order. Good evening, Council, and those that are participating. Again, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, City Council has determined to continue these meetings on Zoom as allowed by Iowa Code Section 21.8, electronic meeting. And those that want to participate can join us by getting on zoom.us/J/826-593-023, or you can dial toll free 1-888-475-4499. And again, we are continuing to watch you can watch the meeting live at MediaCom Channel 12 or on our YouTube channel. So this evening, it gives me great pleasure, and in fact, we have two big events in the last week regarding SunSmart Ames and our solar project. And I see Reverend Kent Kuzik, is that right, Kent?
Yes, thank you.
And also, I believe you have someone with you, is that right? Do you have Larry, is it Corson?
Kirsten, I'm
sorry, I apologize. So what we have tonight is we're going to get this certificate to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Ames. I'm going to just share some remarks, and I think that Pastor McCusick is also going to have a few words to offer. So tonight, I'm excited to recognize the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ames as our first SunSmart champion. Unitarian Universalist is being recognized for its commitment to renewable energy through the SunSmart Ames Community Solar Project. It's exciting to break ground on the project last Friday, and we expect to be producing solar energy by the end of the year. Unitarian Universalist commitment to renewable energy is evidenced by the congregation's purchase of enough power packs to provide 100% of their electric usage, and it gets better beyond that. In addition to participating in SunSmart Ames, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ames already had installed solar panels on their facility in 2010, a decade ago. That was the first customer-owned system interconnected to the Ames electric system. Through SunSmart Ames, power packs will continue to produce green energy and credits on utility accounts for 20 years. And by signing this certificate, I'm pleased to name the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ames as our very first SunSmart champion. On behalf of City Council, Ames Electric Services, and our entire community, I want to thank you so much for your investment. You are definitely taking the lead and demonstrating that you are committed to renewable energy. And while I can just show it to you on the screen, we'll see to it that it is delivered to you. So, Pastor, if you want to share a few words.
Yes, thank you. I've been serving the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ames for 8 years, and it's clear to me that their commitment to sustainable and renewable energy was taking place, as you just spoke, well before I arrived on the scene. When this project was offered as a possibility, it's rare to see excitement go through the congregation as much as it did for this project. And Larry Kirsten is with us tonight, who was one of the leaders in this project, and I would welcome his thoughts to share with you. And thank you for this honor. We greatly appreciate it.
That's our pleasure. Please, Larry, go ahead.
Thanks, Kent, and thank you to the mayor and council. The Unitarian Fellowship is an organization, and there are quite a number of individuals within the organization that have a really strong identity with the natural world, and above all, a concern about climate change and wanting to do something about climate change. This solar farm project, therefore, was kind of right in our wheelhouse from the initial concept discussions. It provided us an opportunity to do something more than just talk about climate change. We could do something that might make a difference. As the mayor indicated, we did set a goal of purchasing enough power packs to offset the entire electrical energy use in our building. And our membership really responded very enthusiastically. It's one of the easiest projects I've ever been involved with. In a short time, we were able to get enough pledges to meet our goal and then to significantly exceed that goal. So we are pleased and excited to be a major player in the project. We were especially pleased to attend the groundbreaking and see it starting to take shape. We look forward to seeing it come online by the end of the year. Thank you to the council and mayor for initiating and authorizing this project. We are very happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
Well, once again, thank you to your entire fellowship. It's meaningful. We're glad you could attend the groundbreaking, and you're one of the founding members of the of it. And again, it's just a pleasure and it's just amazing. We recognized, council recognized, I think most of you were able to make it, but those that were on the top line, I believe, contributed, 25%. And here, Unitarian Universalist did 100%, which is absolutely amazing. And so this is well deserved. And thank you for joining us this evening. And look forward to additional partnerships in the future with you as well. Okay, moving on. I now have continuing the theme of renewable energy and sustainability. I'm going to be reading a proclamation regarding American Wind Week. And Don Com is going to be the one to be receiving this. Whereas wind energy is the largest provider of renewable energy in the country, and whereas wind provides 42% of Iowa's in-state electric generation, equal to the energy required to power 2.4 million households, which respectively ranks Iowa as the first and second in the nation. And whereas Iowa is home to 11 wind turbine manufacturing facilities with over 9,000 jobs supported by wind and solar energy throughout the state. And whereas to date, wind projects in Iowa have attracted nearly $19 billion in investment and provide over $60 million to Iowa communities through state and local taxes, which in part help pay for community betterment projects, schools, infrastructure, and or public safety improvements. And whereas a number of years ago, the City of Ames Electric Services entered into a 20-year, 36 megawatt power purchase agreement with Garden Wind LLC from a wind farm located near Zearing, Iowa. And on average, 15% of the Ames's community annual electric usage is provided by wind energy. And whereas the City of Ames remains committed to procuring electricity from renewable and sustainable sources, including but not limited to wind energy. Therefore, I, John A. Hela, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim the week of August 9th through 15th, 2020 as American Wind Week. I encourage all of our citizens to learn more about the benefits of wind energy in our community, celebrate Iowa's leadership in renewable energy production, and the City of Ames' commitment to utilizing wind energy as a part of its energy portfolio. I don't see Mr. Com. I believe he might have been en route somewhere, but we will see to it that the City of Ames Electric Services receives this proclamation. And it's just, again, exciting to have both a recognizing a SunSmart champion and American Wind Week proclamation all in the same evening. So, and Council, before we move any further, it's with a heavy heart that we just want to acknowledge and express our sincere condolences to the family of Dan Flannery in the passing of a beloved, eminently skilled swim coach with the Ames High School. I think words escape me in terms of what to share, besides the fact that it was an incredible loss, and we're grieved by what has transpired in the entire Ames community, the swim team, the Ames staff, Ames School District staff, and I think that even some of you may have had direct contact with them as well. So we do extend our condolences, and it's going to be a big hole to fill on both the swim team and in our community at large. So. All right, we move on to consent agenda. Council, does anybody wish to pull any item this evening from the agenda?
Mayor, I'd like to pull item 11.
Okay, item 11. Anything else? Oh, excuse me. Also, Council, I just want to bring to your attention before we vote on that, we are working from an amended agenda this evening. And under item 10 on consent, it includes a resolution approving amended COVID-19 leave policy. And also, we'll talk about it when we get towards the end. Under item 46, at staff's request, we're going to be opening and continuing a hearing and only accepting the report of bids tonight on that item, and I'll bring that to your attention when we get to that point. So, with that said, I entertain a motion to approve consent less item 11.
So moved.
Fletcher?
Second.
Corriere, seconded. Roll call, please.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you.
Very good. Gloria?
I pulled item 11 because I think we've had a couple of what I would consider very positive additions to our Cyclones Care messaging, and I thought maybe Susan could give us an update on that before we vote on the item.
Yeah, so this morning, the Story County Board of Supervisors had their regular meeting and decided that they wanted to become part of the campaign as a funding member, and they approved $3,000 to be put towards Cyclones Care. In addition, this morning, I heard from Heartland Senior Services, who said that their clientele, they believe, were some of the most vulnerable in the county, and they also wanted to contribute at a lower level to be part of the campaign because they felt it was truly very important to what they do. And so we have had support now confirmed from Iowa State University, the Chamber of Commerce, Story County, Heartland, and Mary Greeley Medical Center has not come up with a number, but has committed verbally. And the League of Women Voters is also deciding tomorrow on what they can afford to contribute financially. So I think this goes a long way in showing this collaboration. We have many, many organizations that are agreeing to be part of the communications plan and push the message out. They do not have the finances right now to contribute to the marketing campaign, but they're willing to do what they can in other ways. So I definitely see that collaborative spirit.
That was the only question I had. If no one else has any issues with this, I would move alternative 1.
Second.
Second by Brown. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Barton.
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Thank you. And thank you, Gloria, for bringing that to our attention. It is indeed a very collaborative environment, and we need to send a unified message to all people that live in Ames that are coming to Ames going forward. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up public forum. This is a time for anyone who wishes to address council on any topic which is not on the agenda this evening. And Brian, I would ask, is there anybody who indicated interest to address council under public forum?
Just as a reminder to our attendees, if you would like to speak, you can indicate by raising your hand with the raise hand button or by pressing *9 on your phone if you're called in. Mayor, I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public forum, and we'll move on to item 35, Motion direct staff proceeding on an issuing a request for proposal on 321 State Street. I believe Kelly will be addressing council on this item tonight.
All right. Good evening, City Council. As you see, we've prepared an RFP for you based on the input from the workshop last week. The RFP is pretty broad as we asked for that kind of direction last week. So we're open to housing options that are directly rental components that are consistent with the low-income housing tax credit program that is run by the Iowa Finance Authority. The proposal really focuses on allowing for either the lease-to-own option or to have standard rental as the project that could be proposed. We didn't indicate a preference for one or the other. The main preferences that are put into the RFP talk about how City Council would like to see a smaller scale building types, but at the same time, there's a restriction of 3 stories, no matter what is proposed. The scoring system, we can go into that in more detail, but ultimately the scoring system is going to really just be a comparison of proposals, and they will be forwarded to City Council to find the best project that meets our interests. And the number one priority, as we said last week, is to find a developer that is very experienced in LIHTC and we believe can put a competitive project together to be the best application possible for next March in 2021. And we think that's the way this proposal is set up, trying to define some goals for the city, but really looking at the track record of the applicant to help guide us towards a successful project for this site. With that, I want to let you know that as a draft RFP, there will be some small edits by the city to get it complete and out the door next week. I think we did hear some feedback that it wasn't always clear that we were taking either a lease to own or a rental project. In LIHTC, they're all considered rental. There's not 2 different types of projects. But we'll make sure we go back through the RFP and reference that it's consistently the housing that would be built on the site is subject to the standards, not just multifamily rental housing that we're talking about. So with that, I think either Vanessa or myself is available to respond to any questions if you have them about the RFP.
I have one question, and maybe I just didn't read it as carefully as I should have. It seems like there is a points category for market rate housing being included in the project, and I'm wondering if that has to be included in the proposal for the LIHTC, or is it that we have market rate housing in the subdivision somewhere, and therefore the LIHTC application would get points for the market rate housing that we're already including?
My understanding is it needs to be on the property of the recipient of the LIHTC application. And it has to be under the control of the developer also, I believe. So I would say don't look to get credit for the single family homes that we're developing across the street. I think everything about the application is highly likely to be expected to be on the 2.78 acre site that we're offering.
Other questions for Kelly or Vanessa this evening? I did have just a couple of quick ones. One is under the attachment D, maybe Vanessa can answer this. Under CDBG special terms and conditions, it talks about agencies must be an incorporated nonprofit in Iowa by proposal submittal. Does that mean that the people who are proposing, the developers, have to be nonprofits, or is a nonprofit refer to the city as the agency?
No, it just means those agencies claiming to be that are saying they're a nonprofit, they have to show that. So we will correct that wording so it doesn't seem like you have to just be a nonprofit.
Okay. All right. And then just one technical question, and it was just, I'm sure your staff will take care of it, is that it talks about the developer has to go ahead and figure out if they have adequate stormwater capacity in the pond. But that pond, I believe, was designed to handle both properties across the street as well as property, this property. And I was just trying to think in terms of just helping the developer have all the information. Are they going to be told how much stormwater capacity is available for them to use in the pond? And then if they end up going over that, they got to figure out how much land they have to dedicate to a stormwater pond on their property, because that could reduce the amount of developable land that they have.
The reason we put that in there is we do have a broad assumption for the development of all of the area 321 state, but I can't guarantee exactly what their proposal would be. So it's really a catch-all to make sure that we do verify that the project is consistent with assumptions. And we'll be able to go through that once we see the proposals and have some idea of what their coverage calculations are. And that was just really to be a heads up to those people, knowing that we need to check that.
Okay, I just want to make sure that if we're going to get their proposals and they're trying to show us on a small piece of land how much they can get done, obviously we all can appreciate they got to take a chunk out for stormwater detention that could affect, what they can do from a yield standpoint. So
clearly the intent is it's principally covered off-site and they aren't reserving substantial areas. If they need to route it, basically make sure they're routing it to the east side of the property as well, or if they have some other plans on near College Creek on how to do stormwater, they could do that if they chose to.
Okay. And then the proposal does also indicate that there's going to be a geothermal system, put in that's supposed to connect to it. What thoughts do you have in terms of how to make sure, because that's not necessarily a foregone conclusion yet, is it?
It isn't. With talking with Ames Electric, the expectation is that with the system that they would put in for the single family home area, it could also serve this property. So once we've made that investment, it should be pretty easy to serve the site. So it's the way we tried to word it is we expect you to connect to it. If it's part of the application process, there's a really good reason why that doesn't work for them. Then they would have to look at extending a natural gas line from the west over to the site so that they could do heating and cooling with conventional means.
Okay, I just make sure that it's. I read through it a couple of days ago, and I had the impression that it was the expectation that they would be. It says the developer is responsible to connect to the district geothermal heating and cooling system. So I would just ask you, look at that and make sure that it's clear. If they don't want to do that, that'd be their prerogative. And if it doesn't get put in, I just want to make sure that we don't have a situation where they give a proposal, then you have to go ahead and modify the proposal because, we have to run a gas line to the site, or we have to put in different equipment or water heaters or whatever. So it might just affect some of their raw costs, that's all.
So the expectation is that if it's feasible, that they will. And it would be a lower cost to the developer to connect to our system because all they need to do is take it from the edge of the street to their building because Ames Electric will have already covered the capital costs. Mm-hmm. So right. I think as long as it fits the LIHTC scoring system in terms of what they're looking for energy efficiency, it should be very beneficial to the applicant. It should be cheaper and it should get them points. I'm hoping it gets points for the efficiency in the QAP. Yep. Now, granted, they don't reference geothermal, so we'll have to make sure that IFA understands that this would meet their basic expectations, even though it's a different system.
And maybe we can put some language in it to clarify that we are in the process of having that as part of the development, both on the north and south side. So they are aware that we are installing that system.
And last thing, I just want us, just coming off of what we had dealt with here a year or two ago, and that is maybe would it be helpful under item Roman numeral 8, submittal requirements, just to reinforce what you say in Roman numeral 4A, last sentence, no reimbursement for any proposal preparation. I didn't see that mentioned under the submittal requirements, but I just wondered if it'd be beneficial just to state it and restate it again. That's all.
We can do that.
That's all I have. Anybody else have questions for staff? All right, we're going to go ahead and open up public comment once again on this one because the RFP was not prepared and available to review at the workshop last week. If people will be willing to offer and limit their input just to what's included in the RFP versus the general nature of the project. We talked about that last week. But if you have any input or comments, I'm going to open up public comment on the RFP aspect of this topic tonight.
Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tony and Debbie Ramey.
Okay. Very good.
Tony or Debbie, you can unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Tony, if you again introduce yourself and your address, and if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, that'd be great.
Okay, I'm Tony Ramey, and I live at 425 Hilltop Road. And I just wanted to comment about the email that I sent to the council, albeit very late this afternoon, or late today. And I did get a reply from David Martin for our ward about that, and his comment was that he didn't see how what I was asking for, which was to include a proposal that's kind of in line with what the neighborhood would like to see done in terms of triplexes for rent to own, and an addendum, an extra sentence on item 1E, I think it is, which is the one that mentions the lease to own housing, that if that document was included as an attachment E, that and so one of the reasons I went ahead and sent that and mentioned it is that as I was going through the material use center, in particular, I think it's is it attachment C or D, the scoring criteria for LIHTC. And so I saw several things on there that I thought was consistent with the idea that document provides. The biggest one is probably 6.1.4 that provides an opportunity for home ownership, that's worth 25 points. And then there's several others like storage units for 5 points, and I won't go into all the details on those in the time I have, but I do think a developer, if they were to take the approach that we have, would score more points on the LIHTC system. The other one I can think of is with the triplexes being a third of the developed units, that would be worth like 5 points for having 3-bedroom units included in the project. So there's probably other ways to accomplish that, but I just wanted to point that out as part of the rationale for that proposal. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Anybody else, Brian?
Mayor, I do not see anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public input. Council?
I move alternative 1.
Second.
Okay, and just for people maybe listening in or haven't read the packet, would you just summarize what that is, please?
Yes, alternative 1 is the city council will direct staff to proceed with issuing an RFP to pursue the development of a multifamily housing component on the south parcel of the Baker subdivision.
Thank you. All right, moved by Corriere, second by Betcher. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed or abstaining this evening? Motion carried 6-0. Thank you very much. All right. Number 36, staff report on the Ames Urban Fringe Plan Amendment for 23959 580th Avenue, also known as a Carmoli property. Kelly, is that you?
Yes, that will be me again. I'm catching up here on my computer. So what you have in front of you is a request to initiate an Ames Urban Fringe Plan amendment. You had this inquiry earlier this year in the context of supporting someone's interest in starting a towing business in this area and having a tow yard along with it. At that time, it was determined that we didn't want to pursue amending the Fringe Plan to address that kind of use at this time. Since then, the property was purchased and by Mr. Larson, and he's requesting an amendment to the Fringe Plan to allow for an expansion of commercial and light industrial uses to the property. In contact with the Story County, because of the zoning on the site as A2, which is essentially an agribusiness type of zoning district, it limits the type of reuse options for the existing building to agricultural uses only. The property doesn't believe he can re-tenant it with an agricultural use, so would like to explore other options. So to do that, the site would need to be rezoned. As part of that process, the Ames Urban Fringe Plan and the 28E agreement limits those options. The area is designated as industrial reserve, and the policies related to that are intentional in that it's intended generally to be land that's annexed to the city for development. Now, in this case, it has already been developed with an existing building, which I think staff is noting as the main exception for this request. It's much different than taking vacant land or an area that we hadn't ever intended to be developed and changing the plan. So there's really two options of how to move forward. The applicant's interest could be met by allowing for a change in the Fringe Plan that would also let Story County rezone the site to commercial light industrial and have it stay in the county for their review and development review. The other option is to change the designation to allow for it to be annexed. And although it doesn't touch the city at this point, there are two intervening properties that we already have a consent to annex. And the city could combine those two properties in an annexation application with this one and bring all of that territory in as a voluntary annexation. The primary difference then would be the review authority would be with the city. We would have to have a zoning district applied to the property. As we noted that this East Industrial area, we need a new zoning district to reflect its intended use in this area. Staff believes we probably would apply that same type of zoning district to this property. That's something that we were planning to work on this winter as the utility project moves forward. And it's something that, again, if we did annex this property, that it would need to have zoning that helps move it forward towards the applicant's goals. The trade-offs are that if we allow for it to continue through the county's process, we would absolutely require that a consent to annex comes in. And I think we underscored this a couple of times that with the planned Highway 30 interchange abutting this site, it's going to be a primary entrance into the city's industrial area. We do have an interest in how that looks, how that functions, and what types of uses those are. So even if it's premature today to be able to serve the site, we definitely want to be able to annex it in with other land. So long-term, it is under city jurisdiction and control. If it's more important that we control this up front on the reuse of the site, it could be done now under option 2, where it gets annexed now. The difficulties are there isn't necessarily an advantage to the applicant of being in the city. Water and sewer will not be abutting this site for quite some time. The city's East Industrial Utility Project is focused on Lincoln Way at this time, and we don't have an option for extending south at this point. But the site is already developed, so it could continue to operate under its current utility systems, which is with Central Iowa Water and with their own rural septic systems for sewage and treatment. So,
Alec, would you mind? Is it possible to put the picture up of this? People can.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. You want the location map that shows where it is?
Just as you're explaining, I think it gives viewers a chance to sort of track better, know what you're talking about, but people don't have the path.
I think your proposed facility layout and or the attachment B, attachment B probably be good, Kelly.
I need host access to share screen.
maybe start with the proposed facility layout and then go to your attachment B or vice versa when you zoom in on it, whichever way is easiest for you to do.
All right, I'm just trying to get my access set up here. Hold on. Okay, do we see an aerial photo right now?
Yep, very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, so to get oriented, the main road through here is Highway 30. You have 580th running north-south. Here's Lincoln Way, and the railroad is at the very north end of the map. So the site is not fully developed. It's about 20 acres, and it's partially developed, about 50% developed. And the applicant at this point is looking at reusing essentially the existing site. No new buildings are proposed at this time. It's a little bit, I got to toggle back and forth here to move things, so it's a little cumbersome. Let's see. So the applicant did show you a layout of how they'd like to break up the building and reuse it to the best of their abilities as much as they could. So that's something that if it's reviewed by the county, they would be subject to the county zoning code, versus if it's in the city, we would be subject to the city zoning and building codes. Just to help give context then to where it is in the fringe plan, the large pink area to the north is that area that's already been designated and annexed into the city for East Industrial. And at that time, we intentionally left the reserve designation along Highway 30, knowing that long-term it was a valuable area to us, and we had the intent of it being reviewed and controlled through the fringe plan. And that's why we're here today, is to look at that. So staff is really focused on options 1 and 2, which is supportive of the fringe plan, in that going to planned industrial is a step towards use of the site and a step towards urbanization of the site as the fringe plan envisioned. PI does not mandate annexation, but it is necessary to allow for future annexation at least. The other 2 options that are described would be to go to a county commercial designation, which would have no expectation of ever being annexed into the city. It would be a transitional category. Staff's not in favor of that because I think it's very clearly in the heart of the area the city would like to see annexed long term. So it's not in our interest to set up kind of a county island in the area. Then the 4th option would be to not move forward at this time. If there isn't an interest in doing this, it's something that could be reviewed starting in 2021 as part of the overall fringe plan update. If you remember, we did agree with Story County that we would revisit the fringe plan once Ames Plan 2040 is complete, and that would start sometime in 2021, but there's not a definite schedule or exactly a work plan on what would be covered yet. So with that, I think I believe the applicant might be interested in speaking as well online, and then if you have any questions for me, I can take those.
Kelly, which is one thing, could you show the properties that have agreed to be annexed into the city?
Yeah, do you see my blue cursor?
Yes.
So I believe it's this property and this property. We have the ability to bring those 2 in together. And that was a result of a rural subdivision about 2 or 3 years ago, where they had to give us consents to annex to do the subdivision in the county. So
Are there any kind of requirements from the state in terms of when you annex land, try and not have jagged outlines or borders? I mean, how would that jive with this request? Because you're going to have a very strange city annexation, wouldn't you?
I would say not. In a situation where it's a voluntary annexation, the state should really not second guess that at all.
Okay.
Our experience as the city is they do second guess it when you do an 80-20 annexation. And even if you think you're making more uniform boundaries, they may disagree. Yeah, generally you want uniform boundaries. But in this case, we're talking about a substantial amount of land between those 3 properties. I think it's very consistent with state code on annexation if we went that route. And that's if you don't do any 80-20s, which you wouldn't necessarily need to do.
So Kelly, the mayor sort of jumped ahead of me to a question I have. Do you anticipate, are there any properties that we would want to bring in on an 80-20? it's nice that we have these voluntaries, but I don't want to forego leveraging capacity with an involuntary if you think that would be helpful. So any thoughts on that?
I didn't really get into the annexation choices. Once we said it was possible, I didn't really spend time on that. What you'll see is there's 3 or 4 properties here on 580th that are rural development. And my guess is they would not be interested in coming into the city since there's no access to utilities at this time. But we could look at that if during the annexation process, but I didn't investigate that into any great depth.
But we could cross that later on.
Yeah.
Annexation, you would have options for us. I mean, just as a starting point, we should always look at making sure that we're not doing something in the short term that's convenient that would prevent us from doing something else on an involuntary later.
Yeah, we would definitely be aware of that if this moves forward, looking at how that matters. And there's a large amount of land here on the east side of 580th that if that developer comes in, I think we would be able to make things work, but I didn't investigate those calculations.
Okay, thank you.
Kelly, I have one question related to option 2, actually. If we were to go with option 2, and that means prioritizing creating that new industrial zone, what does that mean for the number of staff hours or the way in which we would have to look at reprioritizing in our work plan?
My thought is you wouldn't necessarily be reprioritizing. When we did the March work plan, what we said is that's a project that needs to get done. It doesn't need to be done this summer because the utility project wasn't moving forward. As soon as we move forward with that utility project, it's something that does need to get done, just so that we are in position for economic development purposes, that we are able to provide zoning and guidance to prospective property owners about what can go here. So at this point, I wouldn't ask you to displace anything else. It's something that can be done this winter. And to me, it's not really changing your priorities.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kelly? So Kelly, can you go to the proposed facility layout, the one just above that? So when they talk about a new interchange, will that be will they elevate the Highway 30 and have will 580th go underneath an overpass then? Is that what you anticipate doing, or?
I'm not very familiar with the plan, but I don't remember that 580 is going to be a grade separation. But I don't have the plans for the interchange with me.
Oh, okay. So it may not. Okay, I was presuming that the interchange was going to be a grade separation, so that may not be the case.
It might just be going away as a crossing at 580th, and then it's being redirected, I think, to the west as a way to control it. But I don't have the plans in front of me, so it's a little hard.
Okay. So we talk about the benefit if you would do option 2 when you have annex the land, that it might have some control over how that property would look. Is that what you were saying?
I mean, you would have your normal zoning controls. So you would have our typical landscape code. You'd have our zoning use controls on the property. We don't really have any more stringent industrial building standards than anyone else, but just, our city development standards are a little different than county development standards.
Okay. Because the other thing is you have at least 2 or 3 buildings there that will remain in the county apparently anyway. So I was trying to think how having this building being required to meet a certain appearance when the other ones aren't, if that would make any big difference or not. That was all. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's just like anything. When we annex something that exists in the county, it's going to be what it is for quite a while until someone does an addition or wants to change uses where they would trigger city development standards.
And then, are you familiar with the zoning that the county may consider? It's a commercial light industrial. Have you?
Yes. A little bit, yeah.
So this property has quite a bit of undeveloped property to the north.
Right.
So do you have any concerns or apprehensions that if they went ahead and option one we voted on, could things be done there that under that zoning ordinance or zoning designation that would be incompatible with the city requirements or vision long-term out there? Or is that, again, hard to say? Or
So if we move forward, I think we'll investigate that a little bit more as part of the application process and talk to the county about it. The only things that probably make me nervous is the county's conditional use permits. Those are things that you don't see in the city, like racetracks, commercial campgrounds. In theory, those are things that are allowed in that zoning district as conditional uses. But the normal commercial light industrial uses, they are consistent with probably where we would go. They allow for commercial service uses. They allow for light industry, manufacturing, fabrication type uses. And then they exclude heavy industrial, which is probably the same thing we would do. So for the most part, it's in line with us. The conditional uses make me a little nervous. I'm hoping the highest and best use of the land is not a campground. That's probably not the case. So as we look at the interchange impacts of the property with the county, and I think we'll have a lot more information on what that means if this does go forward.
so would there be the option that you engage in conversation with the purchaser and the county and come to some kind of agreement that there be some additional limitations put on, some conditions? If we're going to require under option one that they would be required to agree to annexation in the future, could you also add some other provisos that would make sure that we're not, I don't mean lock them down with handcuffs, they just can't do anything. I'm just trying to think, to try and use your understanding of vision where we're headed to make sure that we accomplish that, because it is going to be a main entrance in the industrial park.
It is, and we'll talk through it. The complicating factor is I just don't know that you can bind Story County to something specific about zoning. You're not going to be able, we are not going to be able to exercise our contract rezoning authority because we're not involved in that step. But we can definitely talk about covenants and maybe some other controls or instruments that might be appropriate to really get this into the city at the right time. One idea might be that the covenant requires you to be annexed before you could develop any new buildings on the site. So reuse might be fine in the county, but you agree to annex before you would ever develop anything else. And that would be a covenant probably rather than a zoning issue then.
I thought it was more an agreement with the property owner versus the county, knowing that we can't control the county, that he would agree to some kind of requirements in his, if we're gonna have an agreement, he agrees to voluntary annexation or be some additional requirements. In other words, trying to work together as a team to accomplish the common objectives.
I think, again, so at this point, this is an idea, and not knowing if there's any traction with it. We haven't had in-depth conversations, just trying to explore the policy issues. But to come back and actually apply for it, we would have to go through more detail with them.
Okay. And would you just review again what and this, we'll open up public comment here in a second, but when council does give you direction, the direction is just to allow the application to move forward. They're not approving it tonight. Is that correct?
Correct. So you're in a gatekeeper function tonight. If there's no interest in it, it won't go any further. If you're willing to entertain an application, then they'll go to Story County. The Board of Supervisors has to also agree to the application, and then they would file a fringe plan amendment application with the City of Ames to kick off the review process and the public notification process.
And you'd be engaged in that conversation from the get-go, or only after it comes back from the Board of Supervisors?
They have to initiate the actual application with us, so we're the first ones to look at it.
Before it goes to the county then?
So the county has to do what you're doing tonight, which is just authorize an application.
Gotcha.
It's done, then they deal with city staff, and we have a joint county staff and city staff meeting to talk with the applicant about the process. And then it goes through Ames first, and then it goes to Story County second.
And that second process would be for rezoning also?
That would just be for the fringe plan amendment. The rezoning we would not be directly involved in. So
that happens after everything else happens?
Correct. It'd be a two-step process to get there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Kelly before we open up public comment? All right, Brian, we'll go ahead and open up public input on this item. Is there anyone who expressed interest to address council on this topic tonight?
Mayor, I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
I'm not seeing Mr. Larson listed, so I thought he was going to be participating, but I don't see him on the list right now.
Either as a participant or a panelist, huh?
Yeah, I'm not seeing his name.
All right, we'll close public input. Council, discussion and or motion?
Well, I can start. It seems like long-term, this is a property that we would want to have under city control. And so of the options, it seems like option 2 moves in that direction. I'm going to be interested to hear Kelly's thoughts on annexation options. This is particularly important area to make sure we get the annexation right on all these properties. So we're bringing all of these in, and so it's sort of a chess game, and I want to make sure we cover our bases. But unless anyone had any strong preferences, I guess I would go ahead and move option 2.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, Brown seconded. Discussion.
Kelly, has Mr. Larson expressed any preferences to you on these options?
I think I think 1 is easier. There's less moving parts for him. But he clearly he did say, I'm willing to do either in his own letter to you back when this was first kicked off. So 1 is definitely easier for him to work with, but 2 also gets him towards his goal as well. I think with the annexation, if that's the direction we go, whether it's under option 1 or option 2, the timing of how that comes together, we can control that, whether it's within a certain time frame you need to annex, whether it's at our request, or whether there's a trigger in the covenant that says prior to any new buildings. I think we can get to that annexation thing under either option, even if we're not sure we want to rush and do it right this summer or this fall because of questions about the timing and how it works with other properties around us.
So I don't really understand why we would want to sort of move quickly on the annexation rather than just hold that option in reserve until we feel the time is right for it. So that's my hesitance about option 2 versus option 1. Can anyone sort of explain why it's better to sort of more thoroughly move forward immediately rather than wait a bit until we're sure it's the right time to do it?
I've been taking option 2, I think in a similar way to what Tim is taking it, that the fact that it mentions the other properties as part of the voluntary annexation sets it apart from option 1. And if you're interested in that expanded annexation, then option 2 would seem to make more sense than option 1. But that's just how I've been reading it.
Maybe I don't appreciate the difference between option 1 and option 2 properly. I guess what I was thinking was that option 1 would add this property to the list of future annexation agreements that we could deploy then when the time is right. Whereas option 2 says, well, let's do it all now.
Yeah, that was how we were trying to make the 2 distinct, yes.
So I feel like it increases our strategic options to add it to the list of things that we can deploy when needed, rather than to kind of pull the trigger on this stuff right now. Unless there's some other considerations that say now is the time. I'm not hearing that yet.
Well, this is not necessarily council's issue, but just the applicant may not be aware, but if it becomes annexed, it's going to be required to meet building code requirements. And if he does any kind of work or has any kind of storage out there that may require fire sprinklers, you won't be able to accomplish that probably with rural water. They don't have that kind of pressure typically. Now they do, they have an 8-inch main out there with enough pressure, but that is something that may enter into it, as well as it may significantly increase costs for remodeling. I'm not trying to advocate for less cost, but typically the county has a more lenient building code than the city does, and so it could have an impact on him. And that's not the council's issue, but just so you're aware, that is something that if all of a sudden he finds out that, oh my gosh, I gotta sprinkle the entire warehouse, that may become a game changer for him as well too. That's just a point of information versus trying to sway you one way or the other. But it is something that will factor into the project down the road potentially for him.
Yeah, and that's something I know that he hasn't dug into very far because he doesn't know yet where this project could go or not go. So that's, again, there's a lot to be learned if this move forward under option 2.
Okay.
So Kelly, then that sounds like it's more beneficial for the applicant to consider option 1 than it would be to consider option 2, given those challenges.
It would be. Option 1 is definitely easier for the applicant.
So, yeah, I mean, I seconded this because I think this discussion is good, but it has helped kind of talk me into option 1 rather than this one. So
I think if there's a consensus that moving to PI is the policy issue that's supported in consensus here, we can work on the annexation component concurrently with the PI designation, right? I mean, you're not approving the PI change tonight. We would have to draft annexation. If it became clear it really should be annexed before or concurrent with the PI change, that's something that we can still work with. So it's not that tonight's your only chance to describe your expectations for annexation if you're willing to move forward with this. I feel like there's a little bit of a consensus, but there's definitely question marks on which option 1 or 2 is better. I think that if you move forward and say you want annexation covenants to go with this, then we can propose the best option for the city after consulting with the applicant in greater detail.
One of the drivers for me on option 2 is that I don't want this property to develop under county regulations. This property, long term is going to be part of Ames, and I think it should be developed according to our standards and specifications. So just as a general principle, we want to have a coherent and a consistent regulatory scheme, and this is going to be a critical property. So right now, there's not a lot there, but long term, this corridor is going to be highly developed, and I'm very excited about its prospects for Ames. And so, having control over this, having our staff review these things, I think would be very helpful for the long term of the community.
Kelly, is all the buildings shown in that proposed facility layout, do those all exist right now?
That was my understanding. Just a second, I can compare on an aerial photo.
Yeah,
there's 2 sets of buildings.
There's an assumption, but my assumption was that all these buildings already existed, and he was just showing how he's planning on using them. But that may be inaccurate.
From comparing the aerial photo to that, I believe that's true. There's multiple buildings out there. There's one main building, and then there's 2 or 3 other connected smaller buildings.
And your point earlier was that you could have he can't build any more buildings out there without coming in and being annexed, and it'd be an option. Is that correct, or is that incorrect?
I think that's a way we could structure the covenant.
So you just be repurposing the existing buildings as shown and not doing anything on the outside. He's just basically putting renters in there.
He probably changes some of the facade elements to add doors and whatnot, but the vacant land in the back would not get touched.
Okay. All right, further discussion, comments?
I appreciate Tim's point about wanting to ensure that we have the right set of development standards going forward. And I guess I like the idea that maybe we can achieve that through covenants, but also I'm just wondering if we do have consensus that moving to planned industrial is what we want to do here. And let's just say that we approve this option 2 that actually says, concurrent voluntary annexation application. Kelly, the question for you is, when you start digging in on that, will you feel able to come back to council and say, well, look, we actually think that the best thing is not to do annexation immediately. You should consider this thing because of stuff we don't know right now. I just don't want to, freeze our opinions tonight.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit left to be learned on the annexation front and exactly what the best timing is for both us and the applicant. I mean, there's elements that affect us as well.
So you wouldn't understand an approval of option 2 as being that we're insisting that there be an annexation before you do anything else, right? Or along with anything else.
Yeah, I think if you picked option 2, we would explain the intent is for you to annex essentially as soon as possible or immediately with the change, but we would work through that as part of the fringe plan amendment process. So we would still do the fringe plan first. We would not necessarily act on the annexation literally at the same night as the fringe plan amendment.
But if it was based on the motion as framed, the intent is that it's to do both, and that it would actually take a motion of the council to go ahead and change the decision from annexation to delaying annexation to go to option 1.
So tonight you're giving direction to the applicant. If you chose option 2, you need to be prepared to annex at the same time that you apply for the planned industrial amendment. It doesn't bind the council to approve both of those, right? There's no bind. I mean, all you're doing is telling them what they need to do to apply and proceed. Right.
So this is not official. So the council is not voting officially saying this is a done deal, but basically is telling the applicant this is the intent. But the council in the future could continue on that same path, or you go ahead and change, as David said. Is that correct?
That's how I would take it. It's what you need to do to apply for the change.
Is that clear to everybody before you vote? Before you vote, not we, you vote?
That's really helpful. Thanks.
Okay.
David, I thought those comments were extremely helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can vote. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, moving on to item 37, staff report regarding downtown paver replacement project.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Justin Clausen from Public Works is on the meeting, and Angie DeWard from the Public Art Commission is also available to answer questions, but I'll kick it off for us tonight. There are 3 questions that we would like to get some direction from the City Council about before proceeding with finalizing the plans and specifications for the project. Now, 2 of these are pretty straightforward after having some discussions with Ames Main Street, and that's regarding the color and the patterns of the pavers that are intended to go in this first phase of the paver replacement project. In communication with Ames Main Street, it appears that they are comfortable with staff's selections for the replacement colors. And so unless the City Council has any objections, I believe we intend to proceed with specifying the colors that are outlined in the staff report. The pattern is an issue in that to replicate the current patterns may increase the cost of the project. We believe we can specify both the curved patterns that require more cuts, as well as the right angle pattern, and see what bids we get, and then at that time decide which is the appropriate choice. And so I think perhaps just bringing it up tonight so that you can prepare yourself to make that decision at the time the bids are awarded, which alternate you'd like to go with. The real item of discussion tonight involves the wall and artwork at we received a request from Tori, and the Ames Main Street representatives and the Public Art Commission both had conversations with the artist and investigated the options related to the wall. And it appears that it is possible to renovate and rehabilitate the art on the wall for cost a little bit higher than $16,000. But it was the desire of Ames Main Street and ultimately of the Public Art Commission to decommission the wall and have it removed as a part of this project. We need to have an answer about whether that's the what council desires before we put the plans and specs out on the street, because it impacts the paving quantities and the specifications. So Angie DeWard from Public Art Commission is here to answer any further questions that you might have about the decommissioning discussion. And Justin is here to answer any technical questions you might have about the pavers and how we would remove the wall if that's the direction the council chooses.
Brian, before you sign off, can you just share why do people want the wall removed?
So the communication from Ames Main Street indicated that the wall was in disrepair. There are a number of tiles that are coming off of the wall and or that are cracked and would need replacement. It's difficult to match the colors exactly of the wall or of the existing tiles 21 years later to the exact colors. And I believe the comments from Ames Main Street were also that they expected removal of the wall would open up that space into Tom Evans Plaza a little bit further so that people would be able to see into the plaza with the wall removed. Right now it forms a barrier between the street and the view from Burnett into Tom Evans Plaza. And so their desire was to remove it. The Public Art Commission, in the discussion with Ames Main Street, I think both parties recognize that there's an opportunity, if the wall is removed, for future artwork to perhaps be placed in that area in a way that doesn't completely veil off Tom Evans Plaza. So there are some opportunities with just the brick pavers into the future there. And I believe that it was also unclear at the time PAC met on Wednesday last week how much exactly it would cost to rehabilitate the wall. I think the expectation was that it was going to be very expensive. PAC didn't yet have the $16,000 figure. That came on Thursday. So PAC felt that given all the circumstances, it would be appropriate to decommission the wall.
And the $16,000, was that to replace all the tiles or just to replace some of the tiles?
That was to replace the damaged tiles.
Okay, so the point is the color still may not match. It may look patched because they're not replacing all the tiles. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, let's take this piece by piece. Let's discuss the wall first, then we'll get to the paver pattern and color. That's the way it's on the agenda. Questions for Justin, Brian, or Angie?
I have a question, but I'm not sure whether it fits with this initial topic or it covers other topics as well. If the wall is taken down, we lose that electrical service that is currently hidden in the wall. And it seems to me that the electrical service may be an issue for the farmers market and other events downtown, but I don't know that we specifically have heard that. And I think the staff report also mentions you could go with the expensive bollards, or you could put in planters in that area. And I guess I'm wondering, if you take the wall down, are we looking at a permanent solution immediately, or are we looking at this as an area that might have planters put in temporarily with some sort of electrical service available, and then Main Street works some more to raise some funds to do something more interesting with that section of Tom Evans Park?
Well, we can
It's
take,
a big thing.
okay. We can take that piece by piece. So first, the electrical boxes. So we know that if the wall comes out, that we need to spend about $500 at minimum to abandon the existing electrical back to a junction box that's further back. That's the least expensive option as it relates to electrical. If you would like to have electrical outlets available in the future, we need to spend an additional $2,000 to reconnect that electric service and put in a new box so that it's available for public events. So that might be one question that the council needs to answer is, do you desire to have electrical access there for the public and for public events and the farmers market and so forth? If the answer is no, yes.
So if, let's say we were interested, and answer is yes, is it possible to delay the putting in of that electric, or does it have to go in when you're laying the pavers because the wall came out?
Justin, do you have any opinion there?
Yeah, it would be preferable to put it in before the pavers went in. We would run conduit from the existing junction box to another island that sits very close by to where the existing electrical outlets are right now. So the most preferable option is to do it right away while we're doing the paver project. It makes the most sense. Could it be done afterwards? It could. I just get concerned putting new pavers down and taking them back up. We might damage some and have to work through that process.
So then regarding the bollards, so the bollards are really recommended by staff as a part of the separation between the driving area and the pedestrian area. And so there are some options there that we've laid out for you with regard to the bollards. We think that they're about $1,000 a piece, and we would need 11 of them to span that 65 feet of the frontage that's occupied by the wall. We could, if that cost is an issue, explore alternatives such as heavy planters or relocating some of the existing planters from Main Street, from other locations along Main Street to this area. We have planters from the Welch Avenue project. So there are alternatives there if that cost is an issue. But if we simply wanted to do the bollards that match the existing bollards in the downtown area, it would be $11,000 on top of the other wall removal and cleanup costs.
So
right. Is that a firm, did someone get a quote to match those ornamental bollards? I just know from experience, those can be really, really expensive.
Yes, Mayor. Well, I contacted the supplier that originally supplied them for Main Street 20 some years ago, and we actually replaced a few, I think it was 8 or 9 years ago. So that's an updated quote on that. And you're right, they are very expensive.
Perfect, good.
And those are the same bollards that were also mentioned in the Main Street report that are looking rusty and so Main Street doesn't really like what's happened to them over the last 20 years. Is that accurate?
I think what you're seeing is a number of different things. One is just age and paint aging. The other thing is, I believe the newer bollards, so the ones that are really striking at the intersection of Main and Kellogg, some of those are the ones that we put in 8 years ago. And the manufacturers now are doing a lot more powder coating than they were in the late 90s, early 2000s. So that's making a difference on how long the paint lasts and retains the color. So I believe that's what you're seeing. So these would be more uniform, but there would still be a difference between what's been there for 20 years and what's new.
So one last comment, and maybe it's a question. My main concern is that if we take that wall down, we aren't locking ourselves into something that Main Street is going to hate for its premier park. I had a conversation with John Hall about that area, and there was some mention of we want to be able to maybe move the holiday tree out and make it more visually interesting, maybe have a bump out of some kind. I have no idea how much of that was discussed with anybody else. And that to me sounds like a big project, which is not something we're looking at right now.
Well, if you recall, the council gave staff very specific direction regarding Main Street's report, and it was to investigate the issues related to the pavers, so the color selection and the cuts, whether they were right angles or curves, and the discussion about the wall at Tom Evans Plaza. So the discussion, we held two discussions, or two separate discussions. One was with Public Works with Justin talking about the pavers, and the other was with Public Art Commission regarding the wall. There was no discussion about anything further into Tom Evans Plaza than the pavers, and there was no discussion about things further out into Main Street than the edge of the curb, because we didn't have direction from council that was something you were interested in. So if there are additional aspects of this request, those haven't been analyzed or included in the project.
Go ahead, Robin.
The repair of the wall, you said that was approximately 16,000? Was
Yes.
what the artist said. And was that known to the Public Art Commission when they recommended?
It was not.
Okay, so that's sort of a new option that we could consider, or they maybe ask them to consider. I mean, yeah, just if they had known its cost relative to like removing and replacing with bollards.
Yeah, the both Ames Main Street and the Public Art Commission separately tried to get that information from the artist prior to last Wednesday's meeting, and that information wasn't known until Thursday. Public Art Commission held their discussion and knew that the cost to repair was likely to be very high. I think that was how it was characterized, but the exact dollar amount wasn't known.
Okay.
Now, it's important to note here, so one alternative, the council could ask Public Art Commission to consider that again, but the challenge is then we're running up against a timing issue if we want to get this project out on the street and started this fall. We have a lot of pavers that are failing, and we hope to get the pavers, the first phase of this done this fall. If it would be a struggle if we have to delay further to accomplish that, and we may have to spend more long term to maintain the existing pavers over one more season, especially in some areas where they're really deteriorating.
I saw Angie unmuted. I don't know if she wanted to address that comment.
Oh, I was
going to echo Brian. Hi, this is Angie. I was going to echo Brian as well. One thing that I also wanted to mention is that there is a lot of maintenance that was apparently, when the wall was first constructed, was mentioned that was needed to be necessary, and we haven't, either that was lost in time or we just haven't been performing that. So I do want to make a note that there are maintenance costs that we would need to begin doing, presumably, if we did repair the wall and keep it. So there are additional financial considerations on top of the repair versus decommissioning.
Angie, would PAC also be apprehensive about a splotchy appearance if the tiles don't match one another? Because that's why I asked Brian. It's not a full replacement; it's just a partial replacement of damaged tiles.
I believe so. From because I spoke with Mr. Dahlquist personally, as did Elizabeth Urbis with Main Street, and yes, he did say that this would be a more comprehensive patch than we had done. I believe it was 9 or 11 years ago. He would use some new products and things like that. But it would most likely look like a patch. And then my fear too, just in speaking with the Main Street group, it did not sound like they like the wall regardless of the repair issues. Brian, I don't know if you'd consider that also to be a pretty fair statement. And so my guess is that this would become an issue again several years from now. And then, like Justin was saying, then we'd have to worry about the pavers underneath at that time when it's not already being done.
Are those ceramic tile?
Yes.
Which in our climate with freeze thaw is going to notoriously require lots of maintenance because of water and spalling. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Angie, did the artist express his desire to you to decommission the wall?
Yes, and he had spoken with Elizabeth Urbis, so I wasn't privy to that conversation, but he did say after speaking with her that he thought that it would open up the area if we removed the wall. I don't know if he was, familiar with information that we would need bollards or some sort of partition between there and the plaza anyway, so that information may not be entirely informed, but that was the impression that he gave at the time.
Justin, could you, a little different tact on this, in the report talks about that a curb would need to be installed to transition the existing street down to the paver elevation. Can you kind of describe what's going on there? And is there any concern with safety or a tripping hazard, for kids or people going back and forth in that area?
Yes. What we're thinking there is, because we have the curb on the street side that's 6 inches higher than where the pavers sit, we're going to have some way to transition it down. And my concern gets into maintaining ADA slopes, as there's 2 crosswalks on either side of this wall, that we need to have some way to make sure we can successfully place the bollards. And what I would do is put the bollards in between the curb area. So basically what it would be, there wouldn't be a place where people would walk up to it. It would be just a solid transition way to help us with the elevation. Doing that would allow us to have a more level plaza area there. So we would have less of a slope, because I do get concerned, with some of our ADA needing to be less than 2% at most of the time, unless we're building ramps, trying to be cognizant of that. So we didn't go into a really detailed design on what would be necessary there. But I thought just by looking at it, we're going to need something to help us with the elevation to try to make it level. So I don't believe we'd have tripping areas. It would be up where the bollards would be. And the bollards, of course, are necessary just because we have turning traffic in that area. And we have pedestrians that, depending on what happens there, if you're sitting on benches and that sort of stuff, every other T intersection like this we have downtown, if you look at Douglas, there's some protection there for pedestrians.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
President, a small question. So when we had Rad Brian Ames, we had these wonderful concert venues at different parts of Main Street. Would it be wise to think about the level of electrical service you'd want to put down there to make sure there are options if we wanted to have a concert or something at that end. It's a little more than what a normal vendor would use at the farmer's market. Any thoughts on sizing that electrical service?
I haven't, but what I did is I did work with our electric department, just getting an idea of rough cost. But Tim, I think it's a great point to saying what are our options down there. If there's not really a change in cost to have a larger service for something like that, I don't see why we couldn't look into that and see if that would fit.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? I'll open up public comment on all these items. Brian, is there anybody in the audience that wants to address council on the wall and the pavers or paver design?
I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
All right, we will close public input. And so you're looking for a motion on whether or not the wall should be deaccessioned, and then also on page 2, you give or staff gives a list of different things that would be costs, and if everything was done, essentially it's about $24,500 less the $1,500 that came from PAC. Is that right?
That is correct. So we would yes ask for your approval for those additional costs to be incorporated into the project, or those additional components to be incorporated into the project plans and specifications, and for your approval for the use of the PAC funds.
So is there a motion regarding the deaccessioning of the vanished rail yard wall first, and then we'll take, if the answer is yes, then we'll go ahead and have a motion regarding what to be done with those then? Or what
Mr. Gorbachev, I move that we tear down this wall.
Second, if that means the vanishing rail yard will be
Okay.
deaccessioned.
How often do you get a chance to say that, right? So,
All right, moved by Garten with force and seconded by Betcher. All right, any discussion? Otherwise, hearing none, roll call please on this.
Junk,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Martin,
Jawohl.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
aye.
All right. Council, I could refer you to page 2 of the council action form. There's a itemized list for reference showing 24,445, and then PAC is going to contribute $1,500 to that cost. So basically, in round figures, you're talking about $23,000 in costs if you do everything. So I'm looking for a motion in terms of whether you do everything or partial. Obviously, the wall cost has to be in there, but you got other things as well. And while they're thinking, Brian, is there adequate funding available to take care, or just an adequate funding to cover that additional $23,000?
So I think the other question that we need to answer before we talk about the funding is whether the council wishes us to replace the electrical outlets or not. That's question number 2 on page 3. And then once we have that final cost, then if the council agrees, we would simply take these additional costs out of the paper replacement project. If the costs exceed what has been budgeted for this first phase, we can take funds out of the future phases, and we may have to allocate money in another year. All of these costs have been all the funding has been accumulated over previous years in the CIP.
I'm sorry, I think I missed it. I thought, so you said about the electrical, How about the 11 bollards, the concrete curb, additional pavers, all that? How's that? Where's that all fit in then into a motion?
Those all these other components, I think, have to take place if you remove the wall.
Gotcha.
The outlets is the one where we have some discretion.
I understand.
If you would like that amenity or not.
So, in summary, by virtue of tearing the wall down, as
yes,
Mr. Garten so eloquently moved, they've actually, council's committed to $20,000 costs. The question is, do they want to spend additional, essentially $3,000 more of costs to get to 23,000? That's the bottom line, essentially. That makes sense.
Although, Mayor, I think I would add to that if we were to explore what Tim was talking about with ensuring that the electrical service was able to handle larger acts, that presumably would cost more.
Could. Yep. I'm just trying to distill down this pure essence. Council, it's not trying to say do we do $24,445 plus an additional cost for more power. It's really
yeah, I think I can make this easy for you. I would be looking for a motion directing us to reinstall the electrical outlets and to explore whether we can increase the size of the electrical service at that location.
All right.
I would make that motion that we reinstall the electrical outlets and that we explore expanding the electrical service at that location.
Second.
And seconded by Rachel. Any discussion? Roll call.
Corey.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Vidy Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, that takes anything else, Brian, on the wall or associated costs before we go into the papers?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay. So the question you have has to do with, do you include the pattern, the curved as well as straight pattern in the bid documents? Is that correct? Or is that already a foregone conclusion?
Right, so it's our recommendation that we include both the curved and the straight intersecting lines as alternates, and we'll see what the costs come back for each of those, unless the council feels strongly otherwise.
And just for clarification, the photo that has curving line paver pattern existing has both curved lines as well as rectangular lines with light colored intersecting square pavers. So you're going to basically copy what's there right now. Is that correct?
That is correct. We've got a draft plan set that's got both of them as alternates right now, and we're just looking for some direction, as Brian said, if you feel strongly one way or the other. Otherwise, we can go and bid the alternates and see where we end up.
What I'm saying is that what we currently exist downtown would be an alternate, not just curvy lines.
Yes, it would be matching exactly what's there.
Okay. So, does council have any objection to that approach? Otherwise, that's what staff is doing right now. All right, so now it's just a question of color, right, Brian?
Right, and so we've outlined the proposed colors. They are not exact matches for what's existing there, but these are stock colors that we think are pretty close and should match well, given the fact that they're not custom. And so unless the council feels that we're way off the mark, we will follow what we've outlined in the staff report for those color selections.
Is there a motion approving the colors as proposed?
So moved.
Betcher?
Second.
Martin seconded.
I have a question too. I guess I've been assuming that we're talking about replacing all the pavers in a particular contiguous area rather than sort of filling in. Isn't that right?
That is correct. We're going to replace all the pavers from Clark to Burnett in this first phase, and then we will continue future phases all the way down to Duff Avenue.
Okay, thanks.
Justin, I have a question. The pavers on the west end of Main Street haven't fared as well, like around the Wells Fargo area. Is there anything we should be thinking about in terms of the quality? I'm less concerned about the color as I am making sure that we're getting something that's we're going to be proud of long term.
Absolutely, and to that point, Tim, we are speccing a very high quality paver. It's kind of the top shelf of the pavers, and there's multiple reasons for that. One is because of the durability of it, and two is because of what we are experiencing, in particular on the west end. What we're seeing is there are a lot of use of I'll call them some high grade chlorides, some de-icing material, in quantities that are probably excessive. So part of what I feel my role is in this project is I'm going and talking to individual businesses about what's going on and making sure that, you know, we're understanding their access issues during this. But also part of that is the education process of what we're using on top of these pavers. So the other component of that is drainage underneath these pavers, because a lot of these pavers are being eaten away from the bottom side. And what's going on is we have weep holes that drain the water and the snow and ice and salt away. And some of those have got plugged up over the years. And so part of this project is to clean out those weep holes, but also use a better draining material underneath these pavers so we can promote better drainage and in turn not only educate about salt usage, because it's not only an issue for our infrastructure, it's also an issue for our environment, but also making sure that we've got something that's going to last a long time. So we spent a lot of time looking at different paver options and landed on these that are, like I say, we're very specific about what we're going to put down there, because we want exactly what you said. We want a long-term project. We want something that's going to last and we're going to be proud of.
Thank you.
All right, everyone understand the motion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Just quick comment, Justin, and I know that there's been some in that Main Street report about the repainting the bollards. I think I mentioned maybe a staff member or two, is that I know there's a good powder coater. There's several powder coaters, around here. There's one in Boone for sake of discussion. Maybe those could get taken off and powder coated versus just repainting. They sandblast them and then they go ahead and powder coat them. Maybe that give you a better, longer lasting finish. Might cost a little more, long term. That's on the existing ones that are showing decay. But
yeah, I'm familiar with the company you're talking about in Boone. I know Parks and Rec have used them before too, and that's something we definitely look into.
Yeah, and maybe any other metals like the benches and the other thing. Well, it may cost a little more, maybe take a little longer to get it done. I agree with you 100%. That powder coating is amazing at what it can do. As long as it doesn't get chipped or all, sanded or scraped off, it lasts a lot longer than a paint does. So anyway, great job. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing the project get started.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Brian. All right, moving on to item 38, motion supporting joint project with Iowa State University for improving public engagement with community residents. Steve?
Yes, sir. As you know, one of the council goals is to use the best communication and engagement techniques and modern technologies to engage the community by reaching people in geographic areas using multiple channels. Quite frankly, with the onslaught of COVID-19, we've fallen behind keeping up with moving ahead with your tasks related to all your goals. So I was talking to Gloria some time ago, and she was able to introduce me to some faculty members at the Department of Community and Regional Planning, and they expressed interest in signing a class or two that could help us actually move ahead with this project. This would be beneficial to us because it would save staff time, which we could utilize for other goals and tasks that you want us to work on. It certainly will give a real life experience to our students at Iowa State, which I think will be beneficial to their education. And of course, it's a lower cost option than going out and hiring a private consulting firm to help us work on this. So the focus of their report I've attached, and we've called it a request for assistance, but I don't want you to believe this is a technical or formal contract. It's just, we thought that we would reduce this in writing so both parties would have a clear understanding of what we hope the class to accomplish. It's important for them as they create their syllabus. It's important to me so I can explain to you the effort they're going to make and make sure it satisfies your desires in terms of this goal. So their major focus will be, I'm simplifying the attached RFA, is really to do a lot of research for us and try to first identify the various groups of residents that exist in this city. We talked about the difficulty in communicating with different segments of the population. So they're going to help us with demographics to identify those different groups that exist. They're going to try to determine which techniques for communication between cities and their constituency or their citizens have been successful. And I think they're going to look at other cities throughout the country and maybe even the world to see which ones have been successful through their research. And then they're going to try to match up the individual successful techniques with each of our individual citizen groups, which is very important. What I'm trying to say is I don't believe one technique will fit all. We might find that a certain technique is more effective than another, and they'll help us with that. But what I like about it most of all is there's going to be a special emphasis being placed on how we engage our underrepresented population, our community members in this city. So that's a real plus for us. So we've outlined this request for proposal. I normally wouldn't bring something like this to you because, quite frankly, our departments work with university classes in many ways similar to this. But because it is one of your goals of your city council, I wanted to make sure that the products they're going to bring you satisfy your needs in this regard. And also there's a small bit of a budget being requested. So I wanted to make sure you're willing to participate in that. So I can go over it all. It's pretty clear though, I think, what we're trying to accomplish. Because of COVID-19, I think we're locked into really the fall semester. We're very precise in what the work will be and the deliverables. I think come the end of the fall, we're going to have to get together and put more meat, quite frankly, we're calling phase 2, which could add to maybe real life experiences, real world experiences, maybe taking one of our projects that we need to communicate with the public and trying to apply those. That will take a lot more public engagement, one-on-one engagement. And I think right now the university can't commit to that. So there's a phase 2 there, but it'll need to be, I think we're going to have to work harder to conceptualize that before we finalize the plans. So I don't know if you have any question. I want to thank Gloria on this because she not only put us in touch with the staff, but help us with the writing of the RFA and our negotiations with the faculty at the university. Any questions you might have?
Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve or support the joint project.
So move.
Second.
Colin and Rachel seconded. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Thank you very much. All right. We can move on to item 39 under ordinances. The first passage of an ordinance revising municipal code section 17.33 pertaining to selling, giving, or supplying tobacco, tobacco products, or cigarettes to persons under 18 years of age. Any questions for staff on this, changing this to the age 21? Okay, I open up the public input on this. Brian, is there anybody who would express or indicating interest to address council on this particular topic tonight?
Mayor, I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, we'll close public comment. Entertain a motion on first passage.
Move on first passage.
Second.
Bronwyn and Gloria seconded. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Martin.
Aye.
Meady Hanson,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk. Aye. Corriere.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain a motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4417, vacating a portion of city right-of-way adjacent to the south edge of 2400 Southeast 16th Street.
Move on third.
Second.
Amber and Gloria, thank you. Roll call.
Meady Hanson,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain a motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4418, revising the parking regulations on Westbrook Drive.
Move on third.
Second.
Gloria and Bronwyn, thank you. Roll call.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Meady Hanson.
Aye.
Okay, under item 42, Steve, do we know, because I have a note here, we're still waiting on an easement to be signed. Has that been taken care of?
I don't believe so. So I think we have to open the hearing and continue it.
We need to continue the hearing. All right, so we actually, declare the public hearing on proposed conveyance on a portion of vacated city right-of-way adjacent to the south edge of 2400 Southeast 16th to be open. And council, I need a motion to continue the hearing to August 11th.
So moved.
Gloria,
Second.
Rachel, thank you. Roll call, please.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Meady Hanson,
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Okay, item 43, hearing on Emma McCarthy Lee Park pedestrian bridge rehabilitation. Any questions for staff on this item tonight?
I do have one question. So this bridge washed out in, I think, June of 2018. I'm delighted that we were finally looking at an actual replacement for this bridge, but this took a long time. And I'm thinking back on this. I'm wishing that I had done what I could in order to speed up the process. So the question I have is, what could council have done to speed up this process? I know there are trade-offs, but what could we have considered, if anything?
I think Keith can answer that. He's here. You're muted, Keith. You there, Keith? Well, let me help you then. Okay. I think it's not the council's fault. Two things caused the delay. First of all, we were trying to get federal funding based on the flood. So we waited a long time. At first, we thought we'd get over $100,000, in excess of $100,000 we were shooting for the project. As you can see, it came in a lot less than that. So in retrospect, you could say if we would have known we were only getting $29,000 2 years ago, would you have said it's not worth the wait? Let's go ahead and spend the total amount from the city. We didn't know that at the time, so we were hoping we'd be much more successful than we were in that regard. Plus, once we got the money, then we had to go through all the DNR requirements and get approvals, and that was slower than we thought too. But I think predominantly it had to do with we were hopefully we'd get a lot more money from the federal government versus what we did receive. Not that we're not thankful for that amount, but that's what elongated the process. So I don't think the council should take any blame for it. I'll assume responsibility for that. We just thought we'd get more.
Well, my interest is just in wondering, if something like this comes up again, and it's something that we're considering doing an application for federal funds to offset something, we could say, well, are we willing to wait for that? How important is it to the community? And I feel like I've learned a little here. I think the council could have said at the outset, I mean, I didn't think of this. we could have said at the outset, let's just do what we can as quickly as possible to replace the bridge. That's something that we should have in our arsenal. I don't know what we'll decide in the future, but it's just helpful to know that we should have that in mind anyway. So thanks.
But I would caution you, it would depend on the magnitude of the project.
Sure.
We're looking for a $3 million grant for EDA. On the East Coast, you might not, it'd be more difficult to find that. And remember, we were trying to purchase property on South Duff and get a grant, which Tracy worked hard on and obtained a grant it's probably after a year or so. Remember, for our flood mitigation project, that was in the millions of dollars. But certainly what this project is in the magnitude of 200,000, a lot different than a $3 million project.
Sure. And we did a similar calculation when it came to the Brookside restrooms, right? It's not that we had like an obvious grant target there, but we just had to decide how much longer can we wait on this.
That's right.
And so anyway, I'm learning. Thanks.
One point to your comment, David. I didn't appreciate just how heavily utilized this bridge was, and what a connecting mechanism it is for different neighborhoods. So we've received a lot of feedback. I just didn't anticipate it being as utilized. So I'm excited to have it back in place.
And I would add to that also, it's not just the volume and number of people, but I think for a lot of people who do use it, it is a huge boost in their quality of life. It's so different to be able to walk from that entire corner of town through the park to somewhere, rather than having to go on a street that has no sidewalks, for example. I mean, it's really huge.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right, declare the public hearing on Emma McCarthy Lee Park pedestrian bridge rehabilitation to be open. Is there anybody that wants to address council under this hearing? Brian?
Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay. Declare the public hearing on this item to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving final plans and specifications and awarding contract to Henkel Construction Company of Ames, Iowa, in the amount of $179,272.75.
So moved. Second.
Rachel moved and Brown seconded. Roll call.
Junk.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Burton.
Thank you. All right, item 44, hearing on the 2019-2020 clear water diversion. Any questions for staff on this particular item? All right, declare the public hearing on the 2019-2020 clear water diversion project to be open. Brian, is there anybody that wants to address council on this item?
Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Thank you. Declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding contract to Keller Excavating Incorporated of Boone, Iowa, in the amount of $102,240.
So moved.
Gloria?
Second.
Rachel, thank you. Roll call.
Corey.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Burton.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to item 45, hearing on 2020-2021 US Highway 69 improvements, South Duff Avenue and US Highway 30 eastbound off-ramp. Any questions for staff on this item? Hearing none, declare the public hearing on this item to be open. Brian, anyone who wants to address council on this one?
Mayor, I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
Thank you. Declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding the contract to Construct Incorporated of Ames, Iowa, in the amount of $1,019,942.60.
So moved.
Second.
Burton and Betcher, thank you. Roll call.
Martin.
Aye.
Thanks. Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
All right, under item 46, hearing on Unit 8 crane renovation. It's my understanding from staff that they would like some additional time to review the bids. So I'm going to first of all open the public hearing on unit number 8 crane renovation and ask for a motion to continue the hearing to August 11th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mark?
Second.
Gloria, thank you. Roll call, please.
Judy Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Martin.
Thank you. And then I'd like a motion to accept the report of bids only.
So moved.
David?
Second.
Rachel, second. Thank you. Roll call.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Judy Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to dispositions and communications of council. We have 6 items tonight. First one is an email from Dan Craig regarding a broken water meter.
Yeah, I would suggest you request a memo from staff regarding this issue. We'll report back.
Move the memo.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Item 2, council, I routinely get these kind of letters, and this is just included in your packet just for your information. Anyone has any questions, I'll defer to somebody else to answer them on the letter. But it has to do with the flood maps and the insurance rate maps. So, third item is email from Hector Arbuckle, request for a study to determine if there are plots of public land suitable for food forests.
Oh,
But
no, I was going to say, oh, go ahead, Bronwyn.
Well, so we had talked about this
Yep, sorry.
with Steve, and so I was gonna move that we have Steve delegate this to staff to bring back to us when we hear about the community garden topic.
Right.
Second.
move by Bronwyn, second by Gloria. Any discussion?
So one thing I have an interest in this for staff consideration is just the maintenance of this. There's a lot more commitment required, and when I was talking with Steve earlier, one thing that would be very valuable is if there was a group that would be a partner to the city in assisting with some of the maintenance. So that's not something we have to work on tonight, but over time, it would be nice if there was such a group that would be a partner in this.
That's a good suggestion for sure.
Okay, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Carried. All right. Next is a memo from Lisa Hovis, Ames Historic Preservation Commission, requesting $2,600 for 2 new signs in downtown Ames.
I'm in favor of this, but I'm not sure what our motion needs to be. Are we trying to allocate funds from council contingency? Are we asking Steve to identify funds? I'm just not sure exactly where to take it.
I think there's also a policy discussion or principle. Does council want to receive requests during the year for things like this and take action on them? Or do you want to take it and refer it and defer it to a regular budget cycle?
Yeah, I'd prefer to stack requests like this against other interested commissions or whatever who also could use funds for projects of interest to them so that we can compare them.
Anything, Steve, to that?
No, I think the first decision you have to make is, do you want to do it now? Or as David said, wait and try to have all these requests come in at one time. And then I can, if you want to do it now, I can identify the funding for it. But the first policy decision is whether you want to allocate funds in the middle of the year for groups.
And then it's at a precedent, which is being set for other groups to come in and ask for other money along the way without seeing them in total or in total.
I think Dave raised
nothing against the project, just more or less a policy and procedure.
I like the project. Yeah.
So
I was under the impression that the Preservation Commission was always supposed to be making their budget requests as part of the planning department budget request. But that's when I was on the Preservation Commission, and that's been a little while.
So I like David's point a great deal. The one question I had on this, I like these signs a great deal. But I'm wondering, is there a broad, be helpful to know how many of these do they have in mind? So if there was, and maybe there isn't a plan for this, but it'd be helpful to know how many of these we can be expecting that they'll be proposing.
Sound like no one knows. All right, is there a motion on this?
Well, I guess I would like to move to ask the commission to bring this request back to us at an appropriate time, but I'm not sure what the appropriate time is. I mean, I would just say vaguely budget time, like around the time of the town budget meeting. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, they would bring it to the town budget meeting, then we report to you, for all the requests when we bring you the budget. All the outside requests we bring to you.
Steve, is this now considered an outside request?
It's not that it's an outside request, it's just there's so much money, so you've got to take the money. It could be an inside request, outside request. They're just groups that aren't part of our operations. You can see it all the time.
When I was chair of the commission, we started with outside requests, and then we were told, no, you're part of the planning department, and therefore whatever the Preservation Commission needs has to go with the planning department budget. So has that changed again?
We'll put it in the planning department budget, so it's semantics. But if a commission comes and asks for $100,000, it doesn't automatically get in there. So that's above and beyond the planning department's normal budget. So I think you have to prioritize these, or do them all. You know what I mean? It will be reflected not as an outside funding. It will be probably placed in the planning department budget.
Excuse me, David, you made a motion. Was there a second?
Yeah.
I'll second.
I'd like to withdraw the motion and rephrase it, actually.
Okay, motion withdrawn. All right.
And so what I would move instead is to encourage the historic preservation commissions and like entities to bring budget requests along these lines to us at the town budget meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Rachel, thank you. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, Steve, you want to comment on item 5 memo from you on the process for notifying bars regarding compliance with social distancing?
No, I just wanted to remind council what our effort was and tell you that Mark has sent out the letters to all the bar owners. The police department actually hand delivered some, talked to the bar managers. I was a little distressed to read that one article that we received today because it's going to be very important. We get the cooperation from all the owners of the bars to help us social distance in there. So I laid out the process, how we'll proceed past those 2 steps. Remember that? So I just tried to document what you agreed to.
I had a question related to that. Did we just send the letter to bars only, or did we send it to all liquor license holders, like a restaurant that also serves? Because like at Wheatsfield, for example, we have an on-premise consumption permit, but I mean, maybe we got a letter. Linda sure didn't mention it to me though. So I was curious, did we send it to all the liquor license holders whether or not they also hold food permits too.
Mark's here. He can.
Yeah, we did. So, Diane has all these, of course, in her database and ran the list for us. But she and I talked about it. She included, any restaurant that serves alcohol too. So we tried to get, everybody. I mean, we did not send it to, Hy-Vee or, or grocery stores that sell, or convenience stores that sell foods, but we did send it to any kind of a facility, a restaurant, bar.
So people come to the city and get it, right?
I mean, I was reading that same article, and and it seemed like the restaurant owner was like, "Oh, nothing we can do if they're not social distancing." And I was really shocked to read that too. Maybe they hadn't yet gotten that.
Well, that was my question. Yeah, when did that reporter actually appear?
Yeah.
In games, and maybe it just happened to be a week ago before that letter actually hit the mailboxes too.
I hope that that's the case, because I mean, that's exactly what we were telling them, was that they in fact do have to enforce social distancing. So I'm just curious about that. I wanted to make sure that it was to license holders for food too. So thank you.
Sure.
So no action is required on this, Mayor, just informational.
Yep. Item 6, letter from Chad Schneider requesting to amend the zoning of property at 27107 Timber Road.
I think you're gonna need a memo from staff on this so we can clarify it for you.
I would move we get a memo from staff to clarify this issue for us.
Second.
Okay, Gloria and David. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed or abstaining?
Abstain, conflict.
Thank you. Hey, that was Tim. I presume you caught that on the abstention.
Yes, I did, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to council comments. We'll start with David tonight.
Nothing for me tonight, thank you.
Okay, Tim?
Nothing tonight.
Gloria?
I wanted to move that we ask the mayor to re-engage with Leon Andrews at the National League of Cities, the Race Equity and Leadership team, as soon as possible, so that we can begin discussions with them about leading us in or assisting us in determining what we can do to improve our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts with regard to policies.
Second.
Okay.
And just before we vote on this, has there been any recent contact since we met him last year? A few of us met with him last year.
I actually met in February, and yes, I did contact him. Oh, it was about a month and a half ago, and let him know with COVID and everything else that's going on, we just kind of had our priorities, or we had to focus on a lot of things, and it was just difficult for staff to get involved. So things are starting to flatten out a little bit, hopefully.
It seemed like an opportune time for us to re-engage.
Yep.
So.
And he acknowledged it, understood it, and so I indicated to him that I thought it would probably be later in the summer that we'd be in contact. So he'll be expecting it, and we're just going to get information from him and some ideas, and probably get that brought back to council, and Steve will be part and parcel of that conversation. So. All right, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, anything else, Gloria?
I am honored to be representing the NAACP as one of their representatives at the national conference. It's going to be occurring next week, and I'm really looking forward to learning something more about how the organization operates at the national level, and I hope to bring back some interesting insights. And finally, if any of you are interested in participating in Leon Andrews' training sessions for the International Town and Gown Association, you should let me know so that you can get in on the team cost for that event. I have already signed up as an individual, and therefore everybody else who signs up can do the 2-day training for $50, which is about 1/3 of the typical cost. So I would encourage any of you who have not done any of the real training to take advantage of this if you have free time. You can check the email I sent you. That's it.
Yeah, can you remind us again when those dates are?
Oh, good question. What's that?
Yeah, September.
It's September. I think it is September 8th and 9th, if I'm remembering correctly. Either that or it's the 9th and the 10th. I can send that information out again, but I know that slots are limited, and I would be able to coordinate a team registration for us if others are interested.
Very good. Thank you. Rachel.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Nicole.
No comments tonight.
Amber.
Nothing for me.
And Bronwyn.
Nothing for me tonight.
All right. Very good. Well, good meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your input and discussion. Very good. And just really encouraging to see our the groundbreaking last week at SunSmart Ames, and also for those that may have had an opportunity to watch the last NAACP community discussion, taking the lead. Again, we just thank NAACP for their leadership and getting those put together, and our staff played a key role in helping get that taped and broadcast. And so I trust it's going to continue to stimulate conversation in our community. So with that said, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Right, Gloria, thank you. We are adjourned. Have a good evening.